Hello, I'm David Wong and welcome to the Qi channel. And today we have a very special guest, my new friend, Dami Egbeyami from Regina, Saskatchewan.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Dami was and is a retired professional MMA fighter.
That's right.
Right. And now he's with me in Nelson, BC. We're finished interviewing one of my other friends and mentors. And I just want to kind of pick your brain. Being a professional fighter, you've trained for many years, different disciplines. So I actually brought up one of your fights from way back then.
Cool.
And we're going to watch the fight.
Sure.
And then I'd like you to kind of tell us what you were thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Throughout this fight.
So yeah, this was one of my amateur fights, and my very first fight in MMA as an amateur fighter was a loss, which this was my path to redemption. I really wanted to kind of showcase what I could do. I was very inexperienced with the first fight, and so finally met my coach, Jeff Wiley at the time, who trained me in jiu-jitsu. And so I'll just go a little bit more into my background. I was more of a stand-up fighter in Taekwondo. And so my ground game was being developed at this point. And so this was really the first fight that I actually got a chance to showcase my jiu-jitsu. So I was a blue belt at the time. And I think this was, that's me there. I think this was in 2010 or no, way before that. Yeah, it was really early. So anyways, the fighter took me down. I was, as I mentioned, inexperienced on the ground, but I was really surprised how quickly I was able to get on top. But as you see, he rolled me over. And so this is where the jiu-jitsu skills comes in, because as a jiu-jitsu fighter, you're really strong from your back. And I was able to slap on an arm bar and pull him in. He picked me up, which wasn't very smart, and ended up dislocating his arm in that hold.
Fast.
Yeah.
So he just tapped, right?
He just tapped. So that was my fastest fight. My first win as an amateur fighter. And after this one, I went straight professional. So it was really, really exciting. And I really enjoyed being in there. As you can see from the look on my face, I had a huge smile, so I was really excited. And he came over to me afterwards, and he couldn't believe how quickly I was able to slap that on. He's a Krav Maga fighter, Andrew Tremblay is, and it was really fun. Yeah. It was a really fun experience.
Yeah, you got that on there real fast. You had a couple of turnovers there.
Yeah, for sure. So
cool.
I'm trying to remember when this fight was. It's so long ago.
Let's see the video.
It was quite a while back.
This was uploaded
2007.
Ultimate Martial Arts Championship.
Yeah. So that was Jeff Wiley's promotion, and I fought a lot of my fights in that fight. But that's Jeff Wiley right there, and Craig Moser, my Muay Thai coach.
Awesome.
Yeah. So first win, fastest fight.
Oh, here's a slow motion.
Yeah.
He's trying to pound, and then you got that arm
bar. Yeah. So as a Krav Maga fighter, I mean, really what they're trying to do is just pound you to the ground, right?
How would he be able to get out of that?
What he would have had to do was to compress me. So the worst thing you can do
is
when
lift you up, because then you extend your arm.
Exactly, because my goal as a jiu-jitsu fighter is to extend any limb that I catch, and your goal as a defending fighter is to compress so that joint is bent at the angle, right?
So he didn't do that.
He didn't do that. He pulled me up, which kind of made it perfect for me. Yeah.
Do you have any other fights you want to show?
Well, I like the highlight reel because it really goes into a lot of the highlights of my fights.
Maybe you can just show me.
And so it's this guy. So my friend Alain Lalonde put this together as one of his class projects. So this is really kind of puts together all my fights. I've got a lot of submission wins, but it also showcases a lot of my striking, which I really enjoyed, in my wrestling as well. So that was a takedown.
Got you in the headlock there. Huh?
Yeah. So this is where I apply some ground and pound. Yeah. The ref should have stopped that one a lot earlier. It makes me look like a violent, crazy man, but I'm actually not that violent. I just wanted him to tap, but he didn't, and I wish the ref would have stopped that earlier. So that's the one I just showed you with the armbar.
So you grabbed his hand right when he hit you, right?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
he was going for the ground and pound. And one of the first things that you're taught in jiu-jitsu is to make sure that you move your head. So you move out of the way of the punch, but you're also looking to capture limbs, right? So by extending out, he gave me that arm. I held onto it and slammed my leg over his neck. So that's a head kick. I was really happy about that. Fighting Victor Daichi, he's a very seasoned fighter.
Knees
Yeah, so
Right
knees to
in
the
the-
side.
right in the pressure point.
Exactly. Just to destabilize him a little bit. And he opened up. So this is some crosses. And this is a takedown. So double leg takedown.
There you go.
Yeah, for sure got him down. And that was another fight in the Calgary, actually, I really enjoyed. Another fight with Adam Farr. He's a good boxer. Got me a few times. I'm sure he gave me a concussion during that fight. That fight I won with a rear naked choke, which is where most of my fights ended, was on the ground. And so I ended up fighting. Even though I'm a stand-up fighter, it was funny. A lot of my fights were on the ground. Yeah, so this is one of my last fights, as I mentioned, with Victor Daichi, and this was a rear naked choke. Basically, what you want to do in this position is pull him, stretch him out. So that's what I'm doing with his arm, is reaching from underneath,
And then you get your legs out.
legs up, and then you slap on the rear naked choke, and you tap right there. So, yeah.
If you are what you say you are, a superstar, then have no fear. The camera's here.
So what does it take to fight professionally? How often do you have to train? How many days a week?
Yeah, so that's a hard question because it really depends on the sport. As an MMA fighter, professionally, you definitely need to put more time in. It's like a profession, you know. Most people work 6 to 8 hours a day, and for me, my physical training was about 4 hours a day. So I train in the morning, 6 a.m. for a couple of hours with my strength and conditioning coach, and then in the evening I do a technique, and so. Kind of tapered it every other day with submission, ground game, and stand-up was, you know.
So you had different coaches for different aspects, right?
Absolutely,
You had a jiu-jitsu
Yeah.
coach. You had a stand-up coach, Muay Thai, was it?
Muay Thai, yeah.
Muay Thai coach. And what else did you have? You had
And
wrestling.
yeah,
Wrestling
yeah,
also.
yeah.
And then your background when you were younger was Taekwondo.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So what do you think your strength is? And you said you were stand-up, but then you also do grounds, or?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I started off thinking that I was a stand-up fighter, you know, and I really like to bang, you know, throw punches, kicks, and all that. But what ended up happening was my jiu-jitsu kind of took over, and I moved through my jiu-jitsu training really quickly. I got my purple belt within 2 years, and that really kind of was my go-to when things got dangerous, or when someone caught me with something. And I always ended up being quick enough to put someone in a hold or a position that, you know, was advantageous for myself. And so that's kind of where I ended up, I don't know, practicing the most and putting most of my efforts. The stand-up fighting game was very natural to me. It was like I didn't really need to think about it. It was just kind of naturally inbuilt in my body. So a lot of it was muscle memory. I was always interested in martial arts, you know, interested in capoeira. I never practiced, but, you know, watched some people who I knew participate in that. Wrestling is in my DNA, you know. In Nigeria, wrestling is really part of what we do as a cultural event. And so I remember being a kid and just scrapping, you know, out in the streets. You know, someone comes up to you, let's wrestle, okay. You know, and just go out and do it in the sand pits or on the grass, wherever you kind of found yourself.
That's good. You start young.
You start young, exactly.
So what made you take the step from amateur to go professional?
I wanted to build discipline, and what I found with amateurs, you know, I was really undisciplined. I was carrying a lot of angst and anger. My parents passed away when I was quite young, and so that created a lot of stress in my life, and I found that martial arts calmed me down. But without the structure of competition, I found that I would go in and out, you know, in and out. So competition really helped me focus and hone in on that discipline area, but also helped me build my skills. And over time, I just found that I got better at it, and I was getting paid better, so I just continued. But one of the things I always told myself was that once I had children, I would stop. And so when my son was born, I decided to quit.
Right.
So that's kind of what how my progression went.
So you have a professional record of 4 professional wins.
It was actually 6.
Was it 6?
One of them was an illegal fight.
Okay.
Illegal because it was not sanctioned
Okay.
in Saskatchewan, and I was not informed of about that. It was the organizer was someone I knew and trusted, and he ended up putting me in this card, and I went on this card to save his event, but ended up the Calgary Athletic Commission found out about it, and put me on hold for about a year. So
All right. So
yeah.
So let's call it 6.
Yeah, 6-0.
6-0, undefeated.
Undefeated. Pro.
So were there any practices that you did while you were training that kind of gave you an edge or help you to, train harder or
Yeah.
help you to win those fights?
So for me, I'm very spiritually oriented in the sense that I meditate quite often, and that helped me get through some really trying times as well. But I also got into neurofeedback and biofeedback, which is essentially technologies that help you train your brain so that you can optimize its performance and reduce stress. And what I found was that by doing that as a practice, it really helped me hone into my focus and concentration in competition as well as in practice. Right. And over time, I just got better and better at being able to control my emotions, control how I felt in the ring and in competition. So that was one of my...
Right, because you want to win, 50% is the body and 50% of mind. Some people say 100% is the mind.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
I think it's both. I agree with the 50-50. You have to have your body completely ready to go into competition. I mean, MMA is such a sport where it can end in 30 seconds, right? And if you're not conditioned and the fight goes past that, where do you reach in for that, physical strength and energy? It's through your training, right? And sometimes you're just going on autopilot, and that's really where the brain comes in, because the brain can help you be in the flow state so that you don't have to think about the moves that you're going to do. But then when you get into trouble, how do you dig deep, right? It's really about the mind, and just knowing that I can push through this pain, I can push through the emotions that I'm feeling right now to actually execute on what I'm doing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that meditation, that brainwave training helps you to condition your mind, just like training, during your workouts, doing your physical training to condition your body.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And you need to do both of them in order to get that edge and win those fights.
Absolutely. Yeah. Without one or the other, I mean, you have people who are just naturally talented physically, and they're able to win a few fights. But over time, I mean, your body breaks down, and you meet tougher and tougher competition. Well, you find a lot of guys who have a lot of physical ability actually just petering out and disappearing from the scene, and you're like, wow, that person was so talented. What happened to them? Well, they missed the mental part of the game. And so being able to balance all parts is...
What happened to them mentally, do you think?
A lot of them broke. Another thing about MMA competition is, I mean, you're getting a lot of shots to the head, right? And concussions are huge in the sport, even though people don't like talking about them. And I suffered a few myself, and I can tell, over time that, those things do affect one, as you grow older. And so what you find is that a lot of MMA fighters tended to, become mentally unstable, or they ended up, just losing steam and not wanting to put themselves back in there.
Like PTSD.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So luckily for me, I was already doing things for my brain that would help me, even past competition time. But even after that, there was still a little bit of work that I needed to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's next for you?
Well, right now, I'm really focusing on growing as a person, as an individual. I had begun a wellness business for about 10 years prior to closing it down last year. And so I'm really in a transition phase. I'm working on a few projects, building some devices that I believe can really help people improve their focus, concentration, reduce stress, and hopefully potentially help improve brain injury at some point.
Fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
Dami Egbeyami,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.